Hi, my name is Lucas Nebert. I'm a research associate in OSU horticulture and a lead in the OSU dry farming project. I'm talking today about adapting plants for dry farming. I wanted to start the talk with the quote, Hopi is one of the few places I know where corn is raised to fit the environment and the environment not manipulated to fit the corn. This quote comes from Michael Kututwa Johnson, who's a Hopi dry farmer in Arizona and a faculty member of University of Arizona. And it's from a talk called Hopi Dry Farming, 2000 Years of Resiliency, which he gave at the 6th Annual Dry Farming Collaborative Winter Convening, which was a virtual event. And that recording can be found in OSU Small Farms website. And I wanted to start with this quote because I think it drives a very important point that throughout millennia, indigenous people around the world worked more intimately with the environments, within the environments in which they are farming, and worked with plants and adapted them to fit the environment. And it's kind of more of a modern approach to change the environment to fit the plant, the needs of the plant. And that often has resulted in unsustainable forms of agriculture. And in the context of today's society and dry farming is overuse of water. And so what I'm focusing today on is plants that we can adapt to dry farm so they use the water within the means of their environment rather than relying on too much irrigation water. So the Hopi flower corn is an excellent first example. And I wanted to give some examples of some contemporary examples as well of folks adapting plants under dry farm conditions for increased resilience in our food sheds. One popular example is the dark star zucchini, and that was bred by Bill Reynolds, who passed away last year, but is a very popularly known plant breeder along the Eel River in the Eel River Valley in Humboldt, California. He had the company Eel River Produce. He was joined in breeding dark star zucchini by John Navazio of Organic Seed Alliance and Steve Peters of Seed Revolution Now. And they worked with some crossing of commercial zucchinis to arrive at the dark star zucchini through a number of years of breeding work, including just mass selection, but also self-pollination and determining which lines are the best progeny and roguing out those that weren't. And anyone who's dry farmed zucchini can attest it's a very fantastic crop to dry farm. Other crop varieties that were dry farm adapted along the Eel River by Bill Reynolds are Christmas watermelon, which is a long storage watermelon, Eel River melon, which is a Crenshaw type melon, and then Stella Blue kabocha squash. And those can be found at the Seed Revolution Now website, along with dark star zucchini. Jared Zystro of the Organic Seed Alliance also works down in Humboldt. And he's a research and education director, assistant director for the Organic Seed Alliance. And he's continuing on this important dry farming work down there, including with sweet corn, tomatoes, and quinoa. Going a little further south along coastal California and Santa Cruz is Joe Schirmer of Dirty Gold Produce. And though he's not a professional breeder, he was able to breed over multiple 13 plus years a variety of tomato called Dirty Girl, which is a dehybridization of Early Girl. So it started from volunteers from a previous Early Girl planting, volunteer plants. And then over the years, he selected for low blossom end rot and a fantastic tomato when dry farmed. And I should note that the Dry Farming Institute nonprofit in Corvallis, Oregon, is starting to try to breed this variety to do well to do better in the Willamette Valley. It already does better than Early Girl with regards to blossom end rot. Other local dry farm breeding projects in the Willamette Valley include selecting the Stella Blue Kabocha squash, adapting it for our bioregion. Furthermore, bush dry bean selections. And this work is being done through the Dry Farming Institute's Resilient Seed Stewardship Program. And also some of this dry bean breeding work is being done through Agricultural Research Foundation. And in addition to some publicly available seeds, so a white tepary and the Whipple bush dry bean, we're adapting selections of Carol Debbie's beefy resilient Grex for dry farming. And so we have more uniform brown and black version of that Grex that we're working on. And we, as in the OSU Dry Farming Project, Amy Garrett, and the Dry Farming Institute. So you can, before I get into the talk about the main part of my talk about corn breeding, I just want to mention you can source seeds for dry farming, and the Dry Farming Institute nonprofit, Corvallis-based, has a dry farming seed directory. The link is right here, dryfarming.org/dry farming seed directory, separated by dashes. Furthermore, Adaptive Seeds has collaborated with the Dry Farming Institute to launch this year the Dry Farm Adaptive Seed Collection, and highlights certain crop varieties that do well dry farmed on their website. And they're also, both the Dry Farming Institute and Adaptive Seeds are tabling at the event today. There are other seed companies that I mentioned, Seed Revolution Now, and then High Desert Seeds in Colorado, Hardy Seeds and Siskiyou Seeds down in Southern Oregon, and Uprising and Resilient Seeds in Bellingham. All of these carry varieties that have been shown to do well dry farmed. Now I want to talk about sort of a process that I've been going through to adapt crop for dry farming in the Willamette Valley and the Pacific Northwest in general through the Dry Farm Culinary Corn Project. We're using recurrent selection as a breeding process for rapid adaptation while maintaining genetic diversity. Excuse me. And the main crop, the crop that's furthest along, the variety is Open Oak Party Mix Dent Corn, which is sold at Adaptive Seeds. And so just brief overview of the recurrent selection breeding process. In year one, we did some hand pollination, 100 to 200 new breeding families using hand pollination. Year two, we evaluated them in the field across multiple fields. In year three, we recombined just the top 20% of families in the new OP population, taking remnant seed from the original breeding families. And then we can complete that process, hence recurrent selection. You can produce new breeding families and do the process over again. In addition to Open Oak Party Mix, we've also done this with Oaxacan Green Dent Corn and Dakota Black Popcorn. Both of them have shown to do well dry farmed. Here's some examples. Dakota Black Popcorn is bred by the Podol family in North Dakota, and they breed it in dryland conditions or rain-fed conditions. Here's just a couple pictures of field evaluations. So we have Open Oak Party Mix on the left, then Oaxacan Green and Dakota Black Popcorn growing together in the fields in 2021. These were evaluated through the heat dome. In 2020, that was the party mix was evaluated during the wildfire events. So these important climatic events, weather events, are valuable in forming the future generations of these varieties. Here's a picture of Oaxacan Green Dent Corn with lodging issues. kind of later in the season. So we're addressing also lodging in that variety. We're also looking at ear quality. There's a lot of variation between breeding families. Each of these bins is a different breeding family's harvest in the field. We're taking out certain yellow and red kernels from Oaxacan green dent corn, and trying to, for the party mix, open up party mix, trying to arrive at more of the orange kernel types. Oaxacan green corn tortillas are a popular item, increasingly popular item, a favorite among Pacific Northwest tortillerias. It has distinctive flavor and color, and currently is being sold in smaller markets. And so there's, our goal is to expand to larger markets for locally adapted corn for this important Mexican staple. Another thing that we're selecting for, in addition to culinary traits and yields, is earliness. We see that on the left, these open up party mix breeding families, a lot of the earlier ones actually are the ones that yield higher. And we see kind of the same trends for Dakota black popcorn and Oaxacan green dent corn, that they're sort of diminishing returns for later crops in dry farm settings, most likely because the ground is quickly drying out. You see these green triangles, those are breeding families of Cascade Ruby Gold F2 cross with Oaxacan green. So we're trying to get that to mature earlier. Strub's green dent corn is most likely related to Oaxacan green. It's a Midwestern dent corn, and we've grown that. And not only does it yield comparably to Oaxacan green, but it is about 10 days or so earlier than Oaxacan green. So we want to include some of these genetics in addition to Cascade Ruby Gold for bringing Oaxacan green to an earlier maturation for the Pacific Northwest. Dry farm open up party mix. Our dry farm version compared to the original, this last year, it proved almost 20% greater dry farm yields than the original in replicated OSU trials. Twice the dry farm yield among unreplicated participant sites dry farmed, and a modest 7% increase in irrigation. And this is after just one cycle of recurrent selection. So moving forward, what we want to do is, with the open oak party mix dent, is another round of recurrent selection. We want to release it ultimately as wildfire dent, just to distinguish it from the original. So the name would be wildfire dent. And the dry farm adapted seed is available. If you're interested, just let me know. And the Oaxacan green dent corn, there's also dry farm adapted seed available, and we want to continue breeding it for earlier maturity and ultimately release it as a dent corn called Cascade Jade. And finally, Dakota black popcorn, we need to still produce seed from top performing breeding families and have a better popping rate and volume. So if you have any questions, you can email me at nebertl@oregonstate.edu. And lastly, I just want to say that these will all be publicly available, all protected by the Open Source Seed Initiative. Thank you.